The funeral reception was in full swing when I overheard my cousin Danny bragging to a group of relatives about his brilliant investment strategies and his new lakefront mansion. The same Danny who had convinced my parents to hand over their life savings 3 years ago. The same Danny who had vanished when everything collapsed, leaving my family financially destroyed while he lived like a king. I watched him from across my grandmother's living room, his designer suit a stark contrast to my father's threadbare sweater. Dad sat quietly in the corner, looking every one of his 72 years. Mom hadn't come at all. She was too ashamed to face the family after what Danny had done to us. "Sophie's doing great too," Danny was saying, gesturing toward me with his champagne glass. "Real resilient, that one. Always lands on her feet." I wanted to throw my coffee in his face. Instead, I smiled and excused myself to the kitchen, where my Aunt Carol was arranging flowers. "He's really turned his life around, hasn't he?" she said, following my gaze back to Danny. "After that rough patch a few years ago." Rough patch. That's what they called it when Danny had taken my parents' retirement fund, their house down payment savings, and the money they'd set aside for my younger brother's college tuition, all for a guaranteed real estate investment that turned out to be completely fabricated. "Aunt Carol," I said carefully, "you know that Danny—" "Oh, honey, we don't need to dredge up old family drama," she interrupted, patting my arm. "What matters is that everyone's doing well now. Besides, your parents should have known better to invest money they couldn't afford to lose." There it was, the family's official position. Danny had made some mistakes, but ultimately, it was my parents' fault for trusting him. I'd heard variations of this for 3 years, at Christmas dinners, birthday parties, and now at my grandfather's funeral. Danny was family. Danny had learned from his mistakes. Danny deserved forgiveness. My parents needed to move on. What they didn't know was that I'd spent those 3 years working as a forensic accountant, specializing in financial fraud cases. What they also didn't know was that I'd never stopped investigating what Danny had really done with their money. And I'd finally found it. The next morning, I sat in my small apartment, surrounded by printouts, bank statements, and property records. 3 years of painstaking research had revealed the truth. Danny hadn't lost my parents' money in a failed investment. He'd stolen it outright, using their funds to purchase properties in his girlfriend's name, then selling those properties to buy his current lifestyle. But the best part was what I discovered just 2 weeks ago. Danny was planning to do it again. This time, his targets were Uncle Robert and Aunt Linda, the same relatives who had spent years telling my parents to let bygones be bygones. Danny had been courting them for months, talking about a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity in commercial real estate. According to the documents I'd obtained through my professional network, he was scheduled to receive their investment of $400,000 next Friday. My phone buzzed. A text from my brother, Jake, now 24 and drowning in student loans because he had to pay his own way through college. "Did you see Danny's Facebook post about his new boat? Literally makes me sick." I looked at the evidence spread across my coffee table and made a decision. If my family wanted to protect Danny, that was their choice. But they deserved to know exactly who they were protecting. And Uncle Robert and Aunt Linda deserved to know what they were walking into. I started with the easiest target: social media. Over the next week, I created a detailed timeline of Danny's activities, complete with public records and property transactions. Nothing illegal, nothing private, just publicly available information presented in a clear chronological format. I posted it on a blog with a generic name and shared it anonymously in several local Facebook groups and neighborhood forums. The title was simple: Local Man's Pattern of Family Financial Abuse, a Case Study. I didn't use Danny's full name, but I included enough details that anyone who knew him would recognize the story: his address, his girlfriend's name, the timeline of his property purchases, and most importantly, his current attempts to solicit investments from family members. The response was immediate and explosive. Danny's girlfriend received dozens of messages warning her about her boyfriend's history. His neighbors began asking uncomfortable questions. Most importantly, someone forwarded the blog post to Uncle Robert. By Thursday, my phone was ringing off the hook. "Sophie, what the hell is this?" Danny's voice was shaking with rage. "This blog post is destroying my reputation." "I have no idea what you're talking about," I said calmly, though my heart was pounding. "What blog post?" "Don't play dumb with me. I know it was you. Take it down immediately or I'll sue you for defamation." "Danny, if someone posted public records online, that's not defamation. That's just information sharing. Maybe you should be more worried about why public records of your activities are so damaging to your reputation." He hung up on me. An hour later, Uncle Robert called. "Sophie, honey, I need to ask you something. This blog post that's going around, is this really what happened with your parents?" I took a deep breath. "Uncle Robert, I've never been able to tell our family the full story because everyone said they didn't want to hear about old drama. But yes, every single detail in that post is accurate. And Uncle Robert, Danny was planning to take your money next Friday." The silence stretched for nearly a minute. "He showed me the investment opportunity," Robert said. $400,000 for a commercial property deal, guaranteed 20% returns. The same lie he told my parents. "Uncle Robert, there is no investment. There never was. He uses the money to buy properties in his girlfriend's name, then sells them for personal profit. I have 3 years of documentation proving it." "Can you send me everything you have? I'll email it to you within the hour." By Friday afternoon, the family group chat was in complete chaos. Uncle Robert had shared my evidence with everyone, demanding answers about why they had protected Danny while my parents suffered in silence. Danny's planned investment meeting never happened. Instead, Uncle Robert met with a lawyer. But the real reckoning came on Sunday at what was supposed to be a casual family barbecue at Aunt Carol's house. I arrived to find the entire extended family there, something that hadn't happened since before the scandal. Danny sat alone on the patio, his usual confidence replaced by visible anxiety. "I think we need to clear the air," Aunt Carol announced, once everyone had gathered. "There are some serious accusations being made, and this family needs to address them." She looked directly at me. "Sophie, did you write that blog post about Danny?" The entire family turned to stare at me. I could feel their judgment, their expectation that I would back down and apologize for causing drama. Instead, I opened my laptop. "I didn't write the blog post," I said, "but I provided the research for it. And since we're clearing the air, I think you should all see exactly what Danny did to my family." For the next 30 minutes, I walked them through 3 years of evidence. Bank records showing my parents' money flowing into accounts controlled by Danny. Property deeds showing those funds used to purchase real estate in his girlfriend's name. Sale records showing those properties flipped for massive profits that went directly into Danny's personal accounts. "And this," I said, opening the final folder, "is the investment proposal he was going to present to Uncle Robert and Aunt Linda next week. Notice the identical language to what he told my parents 3 years ago?" The patio was dead silent, except for the sound of pages turning as family members passed around the documentation. Danny finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this. The investments were real. They just went wrong. Danny," I said, pulling up another document on my screen, "here's a photo of you on your new boat last month. The boat you bought with money that was supposed to be my brother's college fund. Please explain to everyone how that investment went wrong, but somehow resulted in you purchasing luxury items." Uncle Robert stood up, his face flushed with anger. "You son of a bitch. You were going to do the same thing to us?" "I was going to pay everyone back. The new investment would have covered everything." "With what money?" I asked. "The money you were planning to steal from Uncle Robert? Or were you planning to find more victims after that?" Aunt Carol, who had spent 3 years defending Danny and blaming my parents, looked like she might be sick. "Danny, is this all true?" He looked around at the family that had protected him, shielded him, and enabled him for years, the same family that was now staring at him with horror and disgust. "I never meant to hurt anyone," he said weakly. "But you did hurt people." My father's voice cut through the air. I turned to see my parents standing at the patio door. They'd arrived late and heard everything. "You hurt us badly, Danny. And instead of making it right, you let our own family blame us for trusting you." My mother stepped forward, and I saw something in her eyes I hadn't seen in 3 years: strength. "You destroyed our retirement, Danny. We'll be working until we die because of what you did. And all this time, this family has been telling us to move on and forgive while you lived in luxury off our life savings." The family barbecue turned into an intervention. One by one, relatives who had spent years defending Danny began demanding answers. The facade crumbled completely when his girlfriend arrived looking for him and ended up confirming that, yes, all the properties were in her name, and yes, she'd been wondering where Danny got the money for their lifestyle. By evening, Danny had been given an ultimatum: make full restitution to my parents within 90 days or face criminal charges and complete family exile. Uncle Robert was already preparing a lawsuit to recover the money Danny had almost stolen from them. And Aunt Carol, who had spent 3 years telling my parents to let it go, was now crying and apologizing for not believing them. But the moment that made it all worth it came when my father pulled me aside as we were leaving. "Sophie," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I'm proud of you, not just for uncovering the truth, but for fighting for us when no one else would." 6 months later, Danny sold his house, his boat, and liquidated his other assets to pay back my parents. It wasn't everything he'd stolen. The interest and lost opportunities could never be fully recovered. But it was enough for them to stop working multiple jobs just to make ends meet. He also faced criminal charges for the attempted fraud against Uncle Robert and Aunt Linda. The prosecutor was very interested in the pattern of behavior I documented. The family dynamics shifted permanently. Danny was no longer welcome at family gatherings. His enablers, particularly Aunt Carol, spent months making amends for the years they'd gaslit my parents into believing they were somehow at fault. And me, I learned something valuable about family loyalty. Real loyalty means protecting the innocent, not enabling the guilty. It means standing up for what's right, even when it's uncomfortable. The blog post is still online. I get messages from other fraud victims who found it helpful in understanding their own situations. Some have used it as a template for exposing their own family financial abusers. Danny's reputation in our community never recovered. His business ventures failed as word spread about his history. He eventually left town, though not before paying back every penny he owed. Sometimes justice takes years to arrive. Sometimes it requires someone willing to do the uncomfortable work of gathering evidence and speaking truth to power. But it always comes, even when your own family tries to protect the person who hurt you. Have you ever been the only one in your family willing to speak the truth about someone who hurt you? Drop a comment sharing your story. Sometimes the hardest battles are the ones we fight with people who should be on our side. If this resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about finding justice when the system fails you. Remember, being family doesn't give someone the right to destroy your life or to demand that you stay silent about it.